beautiful women. Okay, so I'm trying to go live here in my Facebook group and on Instagram. So this is my first time doing it this way. And I wanted to dive into some topics. If you're not in the Facebook group, we do some extra workshops and circles and other things, interactivity in that group. So if you want to join our Facebook group, there's the link in my Instagram bio. You'll be able to go over. It's a private group on Facebook. It's also, I don't know if it comes up if you would search Wildly Awakened Motherhood because it's private. So go on there to get added to that group. I'm really focusing on that this year to expand that group, doing more circles and discussions like this and other workshops to come, more embodiment, dance, yin type workshops. And over on YouTube, I'm going to do the same of doing classes. So this week I'm going to be doing my first body wisdom class. It's going to be very much an introductory type class of the body movement with the chakras, how it all works and how it relates to your kind of your embodiment journey, your awakening process into womanhood, and embracing the wisdom that you have and how our body speaks to us in very delicate ways until we aren't listening to our body. And then it goes into more, we start to see more symptomologies that come up as we aren't being aware of the sensations and the feelings and the aches and pains and little voices of our body. It begins to get bigger and larger. And that's what this is all about. Learning to connect with the body and how that wisdom will build through you as you lean in to the movement medicine of your body. So this today is to talk about the lower chakras. We're going to talk about what they are, the main 3 lower chakras, and how they connect to the energetic system and what role they play in an embodiment journey, how they play a role in our awakening and the evolutionary process of our life. So if you don't know, I am a yoga teacher. I'm not currently working in a studio or anything like that, but I have done many yoga classes. I've taught a lot of yoga in the past. I started as a personal trainer and I was working at Lifetime Fitness, and I started teaching yoga at a Snap Fitness after that. And it kind of evolved from there. I started as it was more just a physical activity class of doing a workout to get physically active and sweat and build strength. And it wasn't much of a philosophical practice for me. So as I started to dive in more and more of the philosophies of yoga, my own practice evolved from there. And eventually I moved into the deeper layers of spirituality within yoga. And then that moved me into yin. And it brought me into more of the energetic healing and the energetic expansion that comes with movement practices as a whole. Not even just yoga, but bringing in qigong and yin practices, because yin comes from Chinese medicine, ancient Eastern medicine, as does qigong. So I got very into those practices as well, understanding the meridians of the body, how the chakras relate to meridians and the channels that run through you, and how we get stagnant blocks within these channels. And through the movement practices, we can open up these channels to bring the free flow back into your system. And that is really where a lot of Eastern medicine comes from. Chinese medicine is the understanding of disease essentially comes from a blocked energetic flow, which begins in certain traumas, emotional experiences to where we have traumatic memory in our body. And we hold this memory in an energy, a blockage in our system when we aren't able to properly resolve some sort of trauma. It doesn't have to be huge traumas. We always think that trauma means some sort of catastrophic event, but it's anything that happens, like Dr. Gabor Mate, I think that's how you pronounce it. I always remember the quote that he says, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you. So it's not as much what's happening to you as far as the trauma goes, the actual trauma, as much as how has it affected your emotions on the inside. Because when we experience a trauma, let's just say an emotionally neglectful parent, someone who doesn't, even both parents, doesn't allow the emotional vulnerability of a child to take place, meaning heavy emotions, outbursts, get punished. And this is the way a lot of us were raised. So say there's an angry outburst by a child or a very emotional crying tantrum, and you get punished for it rather than being sat with and given the space and understanding from the adult to allow that emotional experience to happen and move through it properly so that it can be resolved. When we aren't able to resolve that emotional experience, it gets suppressed in our system. It's like a little fragmentation of our energetic body gets kind of tucked away. And every single time that happens, we tuck a little bit more away, and there's these little tiny fragments within us that become like, if we want to talk metaphorically speaking, those are the shadows in our body. All the little tiny fragments are the shadows. Speak of it in a literal sense, seeing the shadows in your body, and they get blocked within your systems. And that gets stored within the fascia. And doing movement practices allows us to work into those deeper spaces, the connective tissues, the memory of the traumas to move them out. And it's in a way where we don't have to think about it logically. So things like talk therapy often force us almost to try to remember the events. And when we do that, it can actually be re-traumatizing, or we might not even be able to get into those memories, because a lot of times when we experience certain traumas, we disassociate from it. We tuck it away. We put it into like a lockbox in our mind in order to cope and move forward. So a lot of times there's parts of our childhood or experiences that we don't even remember, because in order to move past it, to be able to move forward, especially when it's in childhood and you just don't have the tools to take care of it, we don't have the memory of it then. So it gets tucked away in a little lockbox in our mind, within the body, and we don't remember it. That is where this type of movement practice, these energetic movements, somatic healing, somatic releases, that's why this is so powerful, because you don't have to use the logical mind. We're bypassing the mind and going straight to the body. And we're not bypassing it in a way where we're ignoring it. It's not about ignoring the emotions and putting it away somewhere else and going this direction. No, it's going past the logical mind and going straight into the body, because the body is what remembers, and the body is what holds it. It holds the memory of the trauma. It holds the emotion and the energetic block of the trauma as well. So, what are the lower chakras? So we have the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. Those are the lower three chakras that are there. They hold the physical embodiment of our human. So the lower three are really the base, kind of like the 3D chakras. They're what anchor us into the physical body and the human experience. So the root chakra is the lowest chakra down, right at the base of the spine. It is our safety. It's our sense of belonging here on this earth. It's our right to be here. I'm going to reference this book just to start. Eastern Body and Western Mind. This is an amazing book. about the chakra systems and kind of the psychology of the chakra systems. And this is a main reference. And I also have Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Myss. That's another great one that talks about the chakras in a deeper kind of psychological aspect of how it relates to traumas and the energies that go with it. So the root chakra, I'm going to come right to that page actually and read from it. So the root chakra, it's our foundation. And it's what's created from conception to about, does it say here? About the second trimester to 12 months old. And it's the right to be here and to have. So it's basically our belonging on earth. And why this is so important in terms of birth work, this has been such a big prominent piece that's come to me this year, is how important the root and sacral chakras are to birth and empowerment for women. Because when we have blocked and traumatized root and sacral chakras, particularly, solar plexus is part of it, but it's very root and sacral based. Because the sacral is the reproductive system, and it's the pleasure center, the creativity center. It's actually our creation. It's our creation chakra. So it's very related to the birth experience as well. But for root, if we don't feel safe in our body, if we don't feel grounded in our body, if we've been experiencing traumas, especially from our own birth, as in our mom giving birth to us, there's been such a long generation, several generations now, of extreme abuse and trauma on women in childbirth. And it's been so brushed under the rug and so normalized that we don't even understand how much of an impact it's had on our root system and on how safe we feel in this world. And it's really key to why women feel so fearful of birth, why women feel so suppressed with their voice and speaking up for themselves, and so much people pleasing take place because we're so fearful of the persecution. And that kind of goes back even further to like the witch wound. We're so fearful of speaking up for ourselves due to the fear of persecution and being suppressed or harmed in some way. Like we were literally burned at the stake or harmed or jailed or whatever for our healing capacity. And that the witch was the medicine woman too. It was the women who attended births. It was the shamans. It was the midwives. It was the herbalists. They were all seen as the witches. So they're so connected to birth work. And it makes so much sense to me now why I've kind of taken the journey I've had through yoga and yin and Eastern medicine and the chakras and how it connects to birth work and into this like energetic embodiment and dance, the movement practices, because they're all so related. It's all related. And it doesn't have to be like one single way of walking toward regaining your embodiment and the your self-empowerment, the liberation of your body, because that's really what our goal is liberating ourselves from a system that is suppressing us, a system that has taken advantage of the naivety of women. It's taken advantage of the vulnerability of women. And in the allopathic system, the industrial birth system, is where so much of the suppression continues. And abusing women and telling them that they're lucky their baby's alive, or telling them that they're lucky they're alive, telling them, oh, thank God the baby is safe because the system was there to save you. When in reality, the system was very much a factor in the emergency that was created. There's so much Stockholm syndrome going on. There's so much of these cascade of interventions, beginning from when doctors give the very first intervention, which can be just as simple as a test. And each little appointment adds a list of items to where they can then give justification of the intervention they want to give you. which eventually leads to C-sections. And the rate of maternal death is at a high for Western medicine. It's insanely high. The C-section rate is insanely high, 40% or more or something like that. I don't know the rate of maternal death, but it's way higher than it should be. And the statistics don't support the idea that it's safer to birth in the hospital. It never has. It never has. So there's so much to consider there, and that's kind of another discussion is going into actual birth work. But getting back to the actual chakra system and how it relates. Sorry if you hear my kids yelling, they're playing right now. So the root chakra is about our safety, feeling safe here, and it was created in our own infancy. So if we didn't have a safe experience as an infant, our root system, our root chakra system will be imbalanced and often blocked. And I'd say it's very common, I can see it in the collective, of how fearful so many people are. There's a lot of fear and ungroundedness as a collective. And the main traumas within the root chakra we have, like I said, birth trauma, abandonment and physical neglect, poor physical bonding with mother. That includes lack of breastfeeding or only short-term breastfeeding or never breastfeeding. We need that bonding. That bonding with mom is extremely important. So we could also bring in the formula industry and how that disconnection has hugely impacted our root chakras. Physical abuse, inherited traumas from your parents, such as if they had experienced like war, extreme poverty, stuff like that. And you can also notice the connection in the root chakra to other illnesses. So as that root chakra gets blocked, it slowly builds into physical manifestation of illness. So physical illness and conditions that are within like your bowel system. I think I had that list in here too. Within the bowels, intestinal system, bones and teeth, legs, feet, knees, spine. Oh, it has to, that's right. It's very much a bone system issue. Eating disorders. So the root, think of the root of your body, is your bone system. So anything related to like the bowel system and having to go to the bathroom, and the bone system, meaning teeth, joints, bones, any of that is very related to the root chakra system. And I have my own teeth issues, and I had remembered that a long time ago, and it makes sense with these kind of blocks that I've had for myself, and I'm identifying in myself, is how bones, and it can show up in different ways with different people. My mom has a lot of bone issues. She's had several back surgeries already, and other issues she's had with bones. She's probably gonna have to have another back surgery, sciatica issues. She's always had a lot of broken bones, I guess you could say, a vulnerability to hurt her bones. And that relates to root chakra imbalance. So mine is manifesting as teeth. Weirdly enough, because I really don't have, I have had knee issues. I've hurt both of my knees quite a bit. So eventually, as we have these blocks in our energy, it manifests into physical conditions. And now let's go into the sacral. So the sacral is our pleasure and creativity center. That is within the reproductive system space, kind of our pelvic girdle and very related to our birth. And our witch wound lives within the sacral as well. Kind of within the root and sacral, but very much within the sacral. And I'm going to list off for this one too. So the sacral system has to do with to be able to feel and have pleasure. And again, it's very much our creation energy, our creativity energy, our ability to have children, our ability to create life. And if there are issues, if you struggle with fertility, with having miscarriages, there's very likely some blockages in your sacral. So that is usually around 6 to 24 months as well. And it comes from, let's see here. So sexual abuse is a big one that blocks the sacral. Emotional abuse, a lot of times in like relationships. So there's a lot of relationship trauma, I would say too, that sits in the sacral. Not even just romantic relationship, but relationship with people, how safe we feel in a relationship and connectivity and the pleasure of connection with another person. Neglect, denial of child's feelings, enmeshment in families, emotional manipulation. So it's even overuse of playpen or restricting normal movement. So even as a child is getting raised into toddlerhood, when we have such a restrictive environment for a child at that age, especially, like there's the 6 to 24 months, so early toddlerhood, if there's such a restriction of what they're able to do, it can suppress almost that energetic development, to be able to explore our creative exploration. And that's where I find homeschooling to be particularly important, to allow that free exploration for children. And then religious or moral severity. Physical abuse, alcoholism in families is a big one. There's some more too, and this one even speaks to, does the root chakra have that? Yeah. They both speak to like yogic and movement practices, therapies, somatic healing therapies to express these traumas because of how deep and even generationally traumas in the root and sacral can be. It can come from generations before you. Like your grandma, great-great-grandma, experiences they've had that continues to carry down the line. It can be so deep. Like I said, if it's not always a conscious memory, you can just sit down and talk therapy and talk through and resolve. It's so ingrained within your energetic DNA of what you carry from your parents. And I don't necessarily mean like DNA as far as matter. We get the energy and the memories from our parents. Everything is energy, and when we understand that, it steps you up in terms of how you approach your own healing, because it's not just a physicality of our body. It's much deeper than that. And that's where energy work is so powerful, because it does take away the logical mind. It's going into the body and understanding that our body is an energetic beam. It's a light body. It's an energetic vibrational system. And also, I will say, the majority of our traumas are stored in the lower chakras. That is where our chakras are stored. So in order to evolve up in order to truly evolve and expand our energetic system up to the ego identity, our self-identity, and individuation is built in the solar plexus, and to move up into the heart space and into the upper chakras, we must be able to work and resolve the traumas in our lower chakras. Otherwise, we can't truly expand up into the upper chakras. We can play in it for a while, and there's almost an escapism from going into the upper chakras. All the meditation work we do, all of that, you can escape for short periods of time and continue to do that. And I actually see that a lot in kind of and I was very much a part of that too. I've been there, constantly kind of calling in and going into the upper chakras of light work and forgetting the importance of going down into the shadows first. You need to build your root system, the foundation of your body, in order to go up. Just like a tree, you got to build the root system down in order to grow up and expand your branches. So you have to go down into the shadows and work in your shadows, into your emotions, into your triggers, and work on resolving that in order to actually move up into the upper chakras in a very divine process. And that's probably one of the biggest things that is missed in especially newer age spiritual circles, that wanting to go up into the love and light and the positivity and all these high vibrational meditation practices, which can be good. There's nothing wrong with them. But if you're forgetting the lower chakras and seeing the shadows as bad or negative, and anger and rage, sadness, all of the range of emotions we have, if those are still being labeled as bad and negative, you're still suppressing. You're continuing to suppress very important parts of your evolutionary journey. So, bringing in our movement practices is all about getting deep into those lower chakras. If you go and look at some of my dances that I've posted, and I'm going to do more into the deep shadow medicine of the lower root and sacral. Oftentimes, the movements and the work of those lower chakras can seem very sexual or sensual. They're more erotic often in how they can be viewed. So there's a quick judgment in many ways of the sensuality of deeper sensual practices of root and sacral healing. And that very much comes from kind of the church's, this kind of purity idea of womanhood and femininity, of not being too, and that's a sacral wound in itself too. That's a sacral wound, is this denial of our sensuality. And I want to say sensuality because it's not necessarily sexual. It can be, it's both. Because our sexual expression is our sensual expression, and it's our creative energy. The sexual energy is the creative energy. And when the sexual energy is suppressed, our creative energy is suppressed. And again, that still, again, goes back to the witch wound era of suppressing. There's this kind of, even if you look back into the Bible and the teachings of around women, even Adam and Eve, seeing the woman, the woman body, the feminine figure as this temptation. The woman in her full feminine essence has been perceived as this evil temptation to the men, to a man who is unable to control his own sexual temptation. And women have then in turn been kind of demonized within their own sexual expression because we've been condemned. We've been shamed for our sensuality and our sexuality and the beauty of the woman's body. And what the woman's body offers, and actually the wisdom that comes up from our deep sexual expression. That is our divine gift to the world. That is our divine creative energy. So that is a direct threat to a lot of the control powers of this planet. So the sexual expression of the woman is the divine connection to higher wisdom of the world. We access a process. So we all kind of go through the same type of journey, just at a different rate. And I don't think we all make it through the same process in this life. And that's kind of, I think, kind of where reincarnation comes in. If we don't get through all of our evolution into really enlightening in the crown, we come back in a new life. And we continue this process until we kind of evolve to that higher state and evolve into the next spiritual realm, whatever that may be. So, yeah, the solar plexus is very much our authentic expression. And we have to heal through the root and the sacral to get to that authentic expression. So there's such a talk about authenticity lately, myself included. And really, to get there is healing through our root and sacral traumas, getting deep into the shadow work, the shadow medicine of our embodiment practices, the movement practices of yoga and yin and dance, and getting down into the hips, into the pelvic regions, into kind of our sensual and sexual expression, is going to work out those stagnant energies, those blocks in the lower chakras that kind of keep us stuck in life. And until we're willing to dive into those, till we're willing to dig in to those shadows of our bodies and understand how our body is speaking to us. And this also comes back to the speaking of our body through sensations and mental illness, emotions, and physical conditions. Those are all levels of our body speaking to us what she needs. So it begins in the spiritual body as like energy, and evolves into kind of our emotions, which is what the triggers we feel from experiences. It's all activated from the mirror of the outside world. So things that you experience in the world triggers. Say my children is a big one for me. Something my child does triggers a response in me. What it's doing is activating a memory, some sort of traumatic memory I've had that brings up an emotional response. And that's an emotion in that experience. So I can face and work through that emotion in that experience. Or another kind of trauma response is to kind of ignore it, tuck it away, and cope with it. That's where a lot of kind of like drinking and drugs and smoking and eating, those are coping mechanisms that are avoiding. It's an avoidance technique for dealing with the memory of the trauma. Slowly over time, as you continue to keep avoiding it, now it will manifest into a more evolved mental illness. So we'll have like depressions and anxieties and bipolars and other narcissistic traits even that'll show up. So that's now your body's speaking stronger, more boldly. And sometimes people will take medications to keep it moderated. That's another coping mechanism. You're not actually addressing the traumas beneath it. The medications are just numbing you. That's another coping mechanism, just like alcohol and anything else. So it's still being suppressed. And then it becomes a physical manifestation. So like a root based one, for example, are any bone issues, teeth issues. You keep breaking bones. You have back problems, sciatica, certain joint issues, autoimmune issues, digestive problems. Usually it's like constipation. It's bowel based, lower intestine. So it manifests into physical conditions. You can keep using medications to suppress it, but you're not addressing the actual root trauma, the initial basis of where that started. So we might not always have the conscious memory of where that actual trauma begins. Sometimes you can address it in the moment when something triggers, and you can actually deal with the emotional experience in the moment and work on resolving it. It takes time to go through and resolve that. German New Medicine also talks about these in terms of biological conflicts. So in the moment, sometimes you can sit with the emotions of the experience and kind of go back and remember when you first felt that way, when that first conflict happened. Like sometimes you can go back and actually bring up the memories. Certain meditation within the moment can bring those up. Certain past life regressions and hypnosis work can absolutely help bring back those memories of those situations. But you can also work into our movement practices. Yin practices are wonderful in getting into these deeper connective tissues to release these traumas. And it's very common in a lot of yin practices. I started teaching yin as well at the end of my kind of yoga teaching time. I evolved from like vinyasa yoga to hatha yoga to restorative yoga to yin. And if you missed it in the beginning, yin is actually an aspect of Chinese medicine philosophy, not yogic philosophy, which is from India. So they actually come from different philosophies, but oftentimes we're kind of bringing them together because they relate. Yin is more related to Qigong. So I really enjoyed those practices. So all of these dance classes that I'm going to start doing on YouTube, I think maybe I'll do them live on Instagram as well. But if you want to go to my YouTube, subscribe to me on YouTube, Wildly Awakened. The link will be in my bio. I'm going to be starting classes there. It's going to combine yoga, yin, qigong, dance, movement, somatic movement practices, very root and sacral based, to dig into those lower chakras where we're holding, women in particular hold so much tension and tightness in the hips, the hamstrings, our pelvic regions. We have such trauma in our sacral. We also hold a lot in the back. Again, root based. All of our bones, joints are all related to the root. So this week I'm going to start classes Thursday morning. I think I'm going to be doing them possibly 10 a.m. Central Time. And it's going to be a progressive process. And we're going to start kind of with an introductory class, and it's going to start to get more and more deep, more and more sensual. And come with a willingness to listen to your body. It's very much an intuitive practice as well. It's not just about following the instructor and what they're doing, because that's very much, again, yoga world and yin, that's very much where I came from, of just follow the instructor, getting your poses perfect, which can be an important aspect of certain processes. But when you're listening to heal your own body, it's very individual. So bringing the intuitive knowing in yourself, reconnecting with that, is going to be where the depth of your healing is going to take place. To listen to where you need to move. Moving into the pain, into your discomfort, into the sensations of your body and not trying to escape it. Not purposely moving into something that's like an injury just to like make it hurt more. That's not where you want to understand the difference between like a shooting sharp injury pain and what is a sensation of like tightness and aching and, you know, from sitting at a desk all day or those types of things where your body is calling to you that you need to move more. You need to move that energy. You need to expand that energetic space, that there's blocks in those areas. And that's what you'll learn through these classes. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it with this quote. Your healing capacity is through the wisdom of your body and how she speaks to you. So start practicing at home. Throw some music on, anything that speaks to you, anything that feels right to let your body start moving and just connect. Learn to connect. Just move. Just start moving more. Move. I hope you all have a great night.